So, Mr. Quinn, the mighty Quinn, it's probably something that's followed you around from school, isn't it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it is actually. A lot of the builders like to say that. Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
There's a song that goes with it.
That's the one. That's the one. You're not an Eskimo, though, are you?
No.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how's business? Because it's been a weird year, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think business is interesting for everybody. People are trying to work out what they're going to do next, what's going to happen next. Are we just going to come out of this? I don't think we are. I think there's going to be quite a significant recession next year. So for us, what we've been doing is ensuring that we're as tight as possible, ensuring that the team are working as efficiently as possible, and getting ready for opportunities, because out of volatility will come opportunity. So we think, next year there'll be a lot of sites and a lot of situations that happen that, hopefully if we are ready and well financed, then we'll be able to take advantage of those, and we'll be able to help people complete things that they're maybe not able to complete at the moment themselves.
Yeah, because an awful lot of businesses, of course, have been really struggling just to keep going at all.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're in the hospitality trade, and I know that pubs, for instance, I was reading that one of the sites that you've been looking at, you've been hoping to have a tavern on it, and at the moment you're just thinking that's not going to happen.
No, it's never going to happen. I mean, for us, you're probably going to see, we think, a 30% reduction in probably hotels and restaurants and pubs, and that will structurally take place. So we think, especially London. So yeah, for us, anything like that is gone. And we'd probably spent on that pub site, I would say, more than 100 grand in legals and in drawings and everything else. So yeah, it's a lot of money to lose, but at the end of the day, you've just got to go, right, what are we going to do next?
And, I mean, somebody who grew up, you're a few years younger than me, but you grew up in an era where going to the pub was a normal thing.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of gone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's horrific. Because it's that time for us in our industry where we meet lots of different people. We used to meet our lawyer in the pub, we used to meet our ground worker in the pub, and we would get to talk to people and find out what's going on in different parts of the business, whereas now you've either got to go and see them on site, or you've got to do a Zoom call. So I think, it's really different, and I feel really sorry for anybody in that kind of sector. I just think it's, for us, we've been very lucky as a sector. We've been allowed to work, whereas they haven't, and I think it's horrific, for them. I really, really feel for them.
How have you coped with Zoom, the advent of the Zoom world?
We've done. I mean, it's weird. I've actually done done a deal, which is a pretty significant deal, where I only met the person after probably 10 hours of Zoom calls.
Right.
But when I met him, it felt right, and I got a good feeling about it, and I think he did, and we're moving forwards with that scheme. It's quite an exciting scheme, but that all came out of Zoom. I think it's going to change how we work, because before I would probably get up to London twice a week. Now I don't have to. And I think, how often do I think I'll go up to London? I might go once every 2 weeks, I might go once a month. So I think that it's going to make a significant difference. You can do much more in a day than you could do.
So as a property developer, what do you think of London at the moment? Because there's an enormous amount of pressure of people who want to get out.
Yeah.
And there's an enormous amount of change going on with Brexit and going on with everything else that's been happening over the last year. Is London's goose been cooked? I mean, will people return to it next year, or is it structurally not the same proposition that it was?
I think you've got other things that are going to happen. I think that the government has said that they're looking to allow people from Hong Kong who are born within a certain timescale to be able to get their overseas passport. So I think that, the numbers that you look at, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are looking at coming over. Okay. Do I think that'll work? Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that if you look, do I think Hong Kong people will integrate into British society? Yeah, they do. Most of them like to drink, most of them like to smoke, most of them like to gamble. They'll probably get on with all the Irish. They'll get on with all the Irish, brilliantly. So I think that that's going to be interesting. They also are used to living in high towers.
Yeah.
Far higher than ours. 50 stories to them is halfway up their building. So I think that That kind of would be interesting. I think that where the
So
pressure...
are you essentially saying buildings like the Shard or, you know, any of the really mega tall office buildings, they're going to become residential buildings?
I think the Shard already is. So the Shard is if you look at it, a lot of it is residential already, whether that be in a hotel form or actually in the form of resi. I think the Canary Wharf is where the big change is going to be. Yeah, Canary Wharf is going to definitely turn into far more of a residential kind of centre, definitely. So yeah, I think, you know, we see significant differences taking place there, really.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and hotels as well. You know, if you think that you're going to have, you know, I would say probably 35% of the hotels in London will go, you know, will not be financially viable. Right. They're going to turn into probably residential as well. So
it's going to really fundamentally change the feeling of our capital city, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's probably going to bring it back to what it was more like when people lived and worked in London, whereas opposed to, you know, what happens at the moment where people live outside London because it's too expensive. And I also think you're going to see a correction in house prices in London. You know, in the last recession, house prices probably doubled or trebled in London, sometimes quadrupled in some places. In the rest of it, to give you an idea, the house price in Sevenoaks is probably only 5-10% in 10 years higher than it was in 2007. So it's only gone up. And I'd say that same places like Deal, where we're developing, you know, house prices, the house price increases are pretty negligible compared to London. So I think that London will come down a bit. I still think it'll be really expensive, but it just won't be probably as expensive as it is now.
And I mentioned Brexit. Obviously, we're still waiting to to see what's going to happen at the moment. We're talking on the Monday before. Well, you know, who knows what's going to happen? But they're in the tunnel, as it were, at the moment. Yeah. What's your best guess on what's actually going to happen next year?
I think with Brexit, I think there's going to it'll be a fudge. I've always thought it would be. It will have to look like each side has won. In reality, the numbers speak for themselves. 40,000 cars were sold to the Chinese from Germany last year. 400,000 were sold into Britain. So the second biggest market to Germany is China, and we're 10 times bigger than that. So you'd have to basically make quite large sections of Wolfsburg, Stuttgart unemployed if you were going to start putting tariffs on. So do I think that there'll be, and the only country that I think solvent in Europe is Germany. Yeah. I don't think Italy's solvent. I don't really think France is solvent. So, and Spain definitely isn't solvent. You know, if you think that 75% of its GDP is based upon tourism, it hasn't been allowed to have any of that. So I think that really Germany's got, I think, control, and I think that there'll be a fudge. I think that's what will happen, and it will look like I think this is all played out, really.
Are you political in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm political, definitely.
In what way? Are you party political, or are you just interested in politics?
I'm massively interested in politics. I think that it depends on who's leading it and who's in the cabinet about how effective it is. It's really funny, because historically, development companies have made more money under Labour government. If you go back through the stock market, they rose, build companies and development companies rose during Labour, more so than Conservative. So I think that it's interesting. You know, you think I'd probably support Labour, but for me, I went to a grammar school, and you know, I grew up in an era where people began to think that they could achieve what, you know, they didn't. Maybe my few, past generations didn't think they could achieve. So I think that you know, in terms of social mobility and in terms of what I think grammar school does, I thought it was huge for me personally. Yeah. I didn't come from a wealthy background.
Well, let's go back in time to back when you were a kid.
Yep.
So, what were you like as a child? Tell us about your mum and dad first.
So, mum and dad, basically, dad was a carpenter and ran basically a shuttering company. So he would shutter towers like Grenfell.
Right. Okay.
And he would shutter bridges across the M25. So he ran a team of guys. My mum was trained up and became a matron. So she basically ran a ward in several hospitals throughout London. And then they moved down to Kent when I was 3 and bought a nursing home.
Right.
St Bart's Nursing Home in Sandwich. And basically couldn't afford to buy a house at the same time, so we lived in a caravan for 2 years.
Okay. And this is when you were a baby?
Oh yeah, I mean I was 3 years old. I remember they moved down 19th of December, 1977 I think it was, and caravan, cold, horrible caravan. So that was my.
Can you remember it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean my sister was there, my brother was there, and in the space of probably 4 or 5 square metres.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be allowed to do it probably now, but it was, I loved it, and I admired what they did, and I loved the way that they grew the business and became a success. And
Are your parents still around?
my mum isn't, unfortunately. My dad is. He lives with me. So my dad basically lives right next to me. We're looking after him. And he's,
What does he make of your success?
I think I don't think you can believe it. If I'm being honest, I think my mum managed to see, just when I'd made it, I got her and babe before she went, and she knew about the idea that I had for the hospice as well. I think I think my dad's proud. I think he thinks I do it the right way, and that's the main thing for me.
Because
really.
that is one of the interesting things about you as a developer. So you mentioned Herne Bay and the sports hub there.
Yeah.
You've invested literally millions in making sure that was finished and finished to a decent standard.
Yeah.
And a lot of other developers wouldn't bother with doing that. They would do the bare minimum and say, well, that's what we agreed to. That's what we agreed to.
Being honest, I don't think anyone else could have got it through their board. It's not about what they want. Whereas for me, it wasn't. I didn't have a board, so. My choice was, we signed a 106 agreement, which was a legally binding document with the council at 2.5 million. And we ended up spending, because the council took so long, they originally refused us, because the clubs came back and said they needed more, and it grew. So it grew from 11 acres to 15, and that costs a lot of money. Because it grew, we then ended up spending 6.8 million. So I personally put in, nearly £4 million essentially. So, most people could probably retire on that.
Yeah. £4 million is a lot of money in anybody's book.
And, I had to put that in to finish it.
Yeah.
But, the way I look at it is you only get one reputation. And, for me, it was more important that we finished it and that we honoured what we said, not just in legal agreement, but honoured what we said face to face. That was more important to me than being rich.
And it's only really come to you signed it off, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah. Well, it's come to light really because the sports clubs have told everyone, which is nice. I don't think they thought when we were going through it, I thought, probably at times they thought, but for us, we never entered into our head. We knew that we had to do it.
Yeah.
And, that to me, when you in a few years' time, when that's being used by tens of thousands of kids every week, I'll be able to show what the truancy levels are for those children as opposed to those children who don't use it. I'll be able to see what the health levels, how much do they use the NHS, who use my facility, who don't. What is the offending rate basically, how much crime is committed by kids who train at my centre as opposed to kids that don't. And when you see that, I think the social impact that creates will be worth millions and millions and millions of people.
That's a really intensely political thing that you're talking about there.
Well, I don't know if it is. I mean, to me, I think...
But that's the thing, isn't it? That's what the meat and drink of politics is, isn't it? Talking about society and life and how you should be doing things and where you invest the money to make a long-term difference.
Well, I think, but when I look at that, the way I look at it is that town gave me the biggest opportunity I ever had. I'm getting my chance to make my difference. Yeah. So, I've decided that no matter what anyone wants to say, I can prove that making that difference, changing those children's lives is more important to me than being rich. I can prove it because I can show you how much I had to pay and how much I paid. And, not many people can get those two documents out and prove it. I can. So, I put my money where my mouth is, really.
Absolutely. And so we've got the pictures of you here skiing, we've got a golf club, we've got a rugby ball, there's quite a lot of cricket, You love your sport, don't you?
Yeah, love it, yeah.
So we'll go back to you as a kid again, because we didn't finish all that off. As a teenager, you got into skiing.
Yeah, I did. So when I was growing up, I went to grammar school, went to Manwood, Sir Roger Manwood's in Sandwich, and brother was there. Brother was a very talented sports person, a lot smaller than me. So I kind of grew from being pretty small to being, 6'2", very quickly, in probably 4 years.
He's older than you, isn't he?
He's older, yeah, he's 3 years older. But he was very high level in football, very high level, county level and a lot of other sports, but higher than county level at football. And
did you think about turning pro?
he did, yeah. But I don't, I won't mind me saying this. You need, the biggest thing I learned is you need self-control. You need determination. You need
discipline.
You do. You need discipline, and not being as good as him was really good for me, because when I went skiing with him for the first time, I got moved up because I read about it before I went away, and I went to a dry ski slope for 2 hours. But I really put some effort in, and when I went out, I got moved up 4 classes from him. So that was it for me.
That must have stung.
Do you know what? It didn't, because he's always, my brother's very, I think his outlook is excellent. He's a happy person. So I think if you're naturally happy, that's fantastic. There are drawbacks to it. You might not be Elon Musk, but he doesn't want to be. So, so I think that, for me it was great because it's the first time I'd ever beaten him at anything.
So how old were you then?
I was 13.
Right.
And so I then got a job washing ski boots when I got back at the age of 14. And I basically then trained every night. I used to do my homework on the train on the way up.
So where was that? That was in Kent?
It was at Chatham.
It was at Capstan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I trained, I used to work there when Granada owned it. God knows what they were doing owning a ski slope, but anyway, Granada owned it. And I trained like mad there. And I got myself in the national squad by the time I was 17. And then I really went for it. Skiing wise, then I went out, worked in Courchevel, and I got myself to a really strong level. Raced on the 5th circuit, and then basically. Did
you ever feature on Ski Sunday?
No, my name did, but they never had enough time to stick me on it.
So this is in the era of what, Conrad Bartelski, that sort of time?
No, I was much later. So I was even after Graham and Martin Bell.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so they're probably 3 years older, so I came after them. This is probably about, I'm trying to think, 92, right. Around that time. And then I did a program called Ski Tips that was on ITV. That was with a guy called Phil Smith. I did loads of that. But basically, I gave up ski racing pretty young, and I went into coaching, and I became the youngest qualified ski trainer. So I used to assess ski instructors at 21 years of age.
Wow.
So if you did an exam, and I was doing that with French. I was training guys who were French skiers who wanted to pass their Euro test.
Is your French pretty good then?
It's not bad. It's not as good now. But I went out there and I lived out in Courchevel for 6 years, and I trained out there. I had a French girlfriend, so. You've got no choice.
You've got to speak the lingo.
You've got to speak the lingo.
So how did you make the transition then? Because, if you're a 21-year-old, you're earning a couple of quid, you're skiing all winter, you've got a beautiful French girlfriend, and then you come back here to build houses. That's How did that happen?
So what happened is I knew by the time I was 22, I'd done winter and summer. So I'd done. In the summer, I'd be doing Le Deux Alpes, working there, and I also worked on another glacier, which was Hintertux, in Austria, and I was earning great money. And basically, I was then basically thought, I want to get out of skiing and have something that I can do full time, and that was health club, gym. So I qualified in that. I'd done like my ACSM, which was a qualification, and I kind of knew that I wanted to find somewhere, so I'd saved up, and I basically kind of said to my mum and dad, and by that time they sold the nursing home, they'd done really well. I said to them, look, I'm going to need you to lend me your house as collateral, all right? I don't need any money.
It's quite a big ask, isn't it?
Big ask, yeah. At the time I thought, of course they should, because I was mad, but I look back at it now and think, God, I don't know if I'd do it. You know, I thought they're mad. But Mum always said she never kind of doubted that, you know, she'd watched me kind of set goals and achieve them, and she kind of never really doubted me. But it was a hell of a thing to ask her to do, even more of a thing to do. But I found an old water pumping station in Charing. I bought it for 120,000 quid in 97, and probably spent about 150 grand doing it up, put the best kit in it, and then within a year and a half we had 1,500 members. It was making, you know, really good money. It was very successful. I think we had most health clubs would only retain maybe 50% of their members a year. We were retaining 90%. I knew every member. I was there constantly, training them. I had some really good coaches that were with me as well, who wanted to help people get fitter and healthier. And we did a lot with GPs. We were doing a lot of GP referrals. We were doing a lot with people who, you know, had high blood pressure, diabetes, but years ago, you know. And
there's a thread through all the things you keep talking about of society kind of stuff and wanting to help people. So does that come from your mum? Because she was a nurse?
Yeah, I think it must do. I've never really thought about it like that, but I guess, I guess I do. I think as I've grown up, I've realised that if you give back, you get as well. Yeah, there are loads of good things about giving. Not just, you know, I think it helps me. So, you know, I think that by trying to give back to the areas in which we build, I think we get, you know, we get something that not a lot of other people would get. You know, so. Yeah, so I definitely think, that's probably definitely come from my mum. I mean, that's what she did all her life. And, you know, if my mum had been around to go into a home, which she wasn't, I would have put her with my mum, because my mum was so good with, you know, she made sure that everybody was so well looked after. That, you know, she ran an incredibly tight ship, and it would have been, you know, I knew that she was always incredibly proud of the care that she gave to people. So, yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point.
Well, I hope if she's looking down from somewhere that she's proud of her son. Yeah, absolutely. So you had this fantastically successful gym.
Yep.
And then you decided what?
I tell you what happened. I'm a worrier.
Right.
Okay, so if you're a worrier, when you have a crash, you worry something's going to happen to one of the kids. You also have, in any business that's got a lot of customers, you can keep, let's say I had 1,500 customers, I could keep 1,450 happy, 50 I couldn't. Then most people can just ignore them, because you know, those 50 people, their way of communicating is to complain. I remember one woman asked me to put a water cooler in. It cost about 800 quid, so I put it in, and she told me that the water was too cold. I offered to write. I offered to write a check out for her. So I said, "Look, I've done my best. I can't make you happy." And she said to me, "Look, I'm really sorry. I think it's my way of communicating." So I wore myself out with people, and we got an offer from a big nightclub chain called Luminar, and they wanted to kind of balance themselves out by having a load of health clubs and not just be a nightclub chain. So we basically sold to them, and they rented the building off me for more money than I bought the entire building for. So it was
a good deal.
It's an amazing deal. And did that, and then that operated in a number of guises until probably they went pop. Not because of the health clubs, they were still profitable, but because of the nightclubs. And that was probably, I would say, I'm trying to think when that went. I would say that went probably about 6 years ago. So trying to think how long, probably 15 years they rented it. And now I've turned it into basically it's a load of apartments. And the car park is turned into like a little business centre. And the apartments I still got, so I've still kept the building, always will. And
that's like a kind of,
it's a lucky building.
It's in your heart there, is it?
It's a lucky building. Yeah. That building in the last recession, got me through a few problems, and it's been a lucky building for me. And when we did the refurb, we actually got shortlisted for refurbishment of the year, So, you know, we did a really nice job on it.
Do you watch programs like Grand Designs and things like that? Are you interested in that sort of stuff?
Yes, of course I do. I love them all. Sometimes, you know, you want to grab them out of the screen and talk to them. But I love it. You know, I think it's as a British people have absolute fascination with property. And I think, you know, that's a healthy thing for me, because I'm in that sphere. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much interest and how much kind of how much passion there is from people.
Well, I mean, so I've just been through that kind of approach. We bought a bungalow, and we took the roof off and we put a second story on it, and so we turned a 3-bedroom bungalow into a 5-bedroom house. Yeah. And I've done an awful lot of work on that physically myself. So there's something enormously satisfying in creating your own thing, and you can physically stand back from it and look at it and go, I did that. It's a great feeling.
We have very similar ways of making ourselves happy. I mean, I love doing that. I think if, you know, we
So as somebody who's got a couple of quid and a development company, have you built your Grand Design?
Yeah, I have, and it out of about 2,000 entrants, it came second. We've won a load of awards of it. It won, I think it got a Reba.
So what is it? Paint a picture for me. Have you gone, you know, sort of Bond villain lair, or have you gone neo-Georgian, or what direction have you gone?
So basically it was a barn. So what we did is we did a barn, and it's very high. So, you know, floor to ceiling heights are probably 3.5-4 meters. And what I did is I kept the same shape of the barn that was there, put a concrete frame in so that I couldn't hear anything, and it's never going to move. And then the brickwork is Flemish bond, which is brick, half brick, so it's really nicely done. But it's not tried to pretend it's old. The windows are pocket windows. They go into the walls, which are a nightmare. I'd never do it again. The architect who did it, I'd kill him. And the other thing we built it to is near passive house level. So to do that with pocket windows is like a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of it. It's, you know, it's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever built. So love it. But people have crashed outside it.
And you've not heard?
No, we've been told, and we
what, driving past?
Yeah,
is it a proper head turner?
There are many crashes that are taken. But we've been told by the parish council that there are at least 12 crashes.
Could you make your building less beautiful, please?
That's the parish council. We're hilarious, but yeah, we had loads of people crash outside it. They break, and then someone else isn't.
Go into the back.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So are you married? Have you got kids?
Yeah.
Have you got family in that beautiful house then?
Yeah, definitely. Been married now for 12 years, and I've got 2 kids. So I've got a 7-year-old and a coming up 10-year-old. Yeah, so yeah, brilliant. And my dad lives there with me as well. So my dad, basically, we look after my dad, and you know, we keep an eye on him now, and yeah, it's brilliant.
So you've created this space for you.
My own little commune.
Is it a commune? I don't
know. Bit of a one.
Well, I mean, people are motivated by all sorts of things, aren't they? As to why you should want to carry on doing stuff. You have made a few quid. You know, you're a wealthy man. You could at any point just stop.
Yep.
So what motivates you now to keep doing stuff? Because as a developer, you may or may not have noticed that from time to time people are critical of developers.
Yeah.
you get an awful lot of stick from all sorts of, you know, people like the water cooler lady who wanted cold water and then found that the water was too cold. As a developer, people want to have certain things and then they don't want
them
other
in their backyard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you have to take it with a pinch. I remember a scheme in Preston I did, okay, where I moved Salvatore lorries out of the village, okay. There were 800 lorry movements a week, okay. Multiple accidents, really serious highway safety issues, should never have been there, okay. Turned from being the centre of a farm into being, you know, the centre of a very, very successful logistics business. So when I go to move it out, local shop don't want me to do it. No one wants to back the scheme because they're frightened they'll lose trade. But really, what happened, Shop doubles in size, looks really nice now. Butchers are rammed, pubs still open. And this is the funny bit. So the people who live in these houses, I remember when I got planning on the night, I got spat at by the objectors and, threatened and all kinds of stuff. And now what's happened is I took a lot of personal criticism and nastiness for getting planning on that. Now the people who live in those new houses, I've set up a anti-housing group. So they live in houses that I got shouted at and spat at in order to give them their place, their safe place, their castle. They now want to set up an anti-housing group.
Because they don't want any more.
To me, that just sums up Britain. If you look at if you go over Britain in a helicopter or you go over Britain on Google, most of it's not built on by a mile. Yeah, it's not densely populated at all, especially out here. And yet, we've been expected. We've got a massive piece of infrastructure on HS1. We're going to have a few more houses. People need them for their sons and daughters to live, and yet they don't want them near them.
If you were, because we sort of mentioned politics a couple of times, if you were, I don't know, which role would you like? Prime Minister, Home Secretary, whatever it would be. What would be the key rules that you would like to see brought in that would change things for the better in this country?
I think that there needs to be an honest conversation about building in areas that need places to be built. So if you looked at it, the highest house prices are in places like Sevenoaks, and the reason why is Sevenoaks has the worst housing delivery in Britain. Should have built 800 houses, 700 houses last year. How many did it build? 30. One affordable home, I think it built last year. I mean, that to me is ridiculous. If those places should be made to look at their greenbelt and to actually appraise it again, because it hasn't been appraised for probably 40 years, it needs to be looked at and places released so that more housing can be built. We need a bit more housing in those areas. How much? Not huge amounts, but you need to look at those areas. I think in places that have been lucky enough to have the benefits of infrastructure, those places are going to have to accept a bit of development. And I think some of them do. I mean, if you look at Ashford's accepted a lot of development and it's done very well out of it. The town is changing, and it's becoming a more exciting, a more vibrant place to live than it was. I remember giving out flyers around Ashford in 1997 and it wasn't like it is now. It's a far more prosperous place now than I started giving out flyers there.
So the other side of the coin is protecting the environment and the countryside that we have. Does that bother you? Are you worried about that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're proposing on one of our schemes, Bimbry, which is in the AONB. That scheme there delivers national highway safety betterment. So what we're looking at building, if we get planning, is a grade separated junction. And that would enable you to shut off Scraggan Oak and shut off the entranceway into KCAS or Kent Showground, and also into the Aerodrome Business Park.
So because a lot of people won't know where Bimbry is.
On the A249. It's on the A249. So it's one of the most dangerous stretches of roads in Kent. I think they've had 394 accidents, a number of fatalities in the last 3 years. Okay, so you stop that. We can stop that immediately because you don't have cars trying to go in front of two sets of ongoing cars, okay, or lorries. And essentially, we've got something that is really special. Where are we building on? We're building on the old airfield. So you can't farm it because it's full of concrete. Yeah. And it's got a big radar hub in it in the centre of the field. The bit that's beautiful, which is further over in the valley, we've proposed to put a 140-acre park there. That's one of the biggest parks created in Kent's history. Okay, and that means that you'd be able to take your sons and daughters there,
and that would be protected then.
Be protected. It wouldn't be mine. It would be given over to the Land Trust, which is a charity, and they would run it, and that would be in perpetuity for all time. So we create a massive, like Moat Park was. We create a massive park, stunning park. We give it over. Now, to me, do I feel bad about that? No, not at all. I feel what I'm doing is common sense. Do I think you should build everywhere? No, we don't. I mean, we must get approached to buy landowners twice a day. How many do I do? Probably one a month. So we're probably turning away, I would say, 85, 90% of what we look at. Very, very little makes it through. I've got to believe in it.
And do you do that on a quality threshold then? Is that the point?
It's done on loads of things. It's done on sustainability. Is it sustainable? It's done on whether we think we're affecting something detrimentally in terms of views. Am I going to affect someone's view in a house? Sometimes yes. Can we work with people all the time? You know, most of the time we'll go around and say to people, look, do you want your garden to be 3 times the size? Okay, do you want, where do you want the landscape buffer? And we want to work with people, and we've done it on a number of occasions. You know, I would try and do it on every scheme that I get. Because most of the schemes we do, you have enough land to be able to do it. We're not in sites that are really tight.
Because the trouble is that an awful lot of modern developments, they end up putting on tiny, tiny houses.
Yeah.
I can remember a few years ago looking around a house where you went into the nominal dining room, and we suddenly realised that if you actually put a table with chairs around it, you couldn't open the door to the kitchen.
No.
You know, it's that kind of thing where the physical space of it is just not big enough.
Yeah.
So is there not enough regulation to make sure that developers put in a minimum size standard, those kind of things, to make sure that
that's come in? I think you probably looked at a house, you know, that was pre that. We also decide who we sell to. I mean, I only sell to really 2 or 3 companies, because some of the companies out there I don't agree are very good, so I won't sell to them. Simple as that, really. And you know, that's because I want to be able to look back at what's built there in 5 years and be able to square it with myself. And if I can't do that, then don't do it. And that's cost me money. I don't mind that. You know, I'd rather build something or get someone to partner with me that's going to build something decent. So I think that most of the houses if we build them, they're oversized. And I can prove that to you quite easily. You know, most of our developments are oversized. We're the biggest supplier of self-build plots in the county. So we've supplied more than 100 people with their dream home.
their grand designs moment.
We have, yeah. So we I think we've done a really great job there. And I think that the houses that we're building as Quinn Homes, they all exceed space standards that are imposed by different councils.
So I know we're going to run out of time fairly shortly, but I guess what I wanted to sort of wrap up with, if we can, is just to give an idea of somebody who is a business person themselves, or is maybe aspiring to have their own company. You've been there and seen it and done it. You've set up 2 or 3 different businesses that have been successful in wildly different ways. What are the key bits of advice you would hand on to somebody else to say, if you're going to do this, you need to do this?
Well, I think you need to be passionate about it. I was passionate about health clubs, and I was passionate about building. I knew that I was going to love building because I loved building the health club. I actually enjoyed building it more than I enjoyed running it. Okay, so the first thing is passion, that you love something. The second thing is you need to read about it. Okay, I'm not qualified. Okay, but if you go and ask those guys down there, I can pull all of them apart. Why? I've read every single report that they've written carefully. And each one I've learnt different things from. So you've got to be passionate. You've got to read about what you're going to go into. Yeah, you need to employ people then, or work with people who you think are better than you. And I think that I've been lucky enough.
That's quite a difficult one for some people, isn't it?
It is, but I think that, you know, I've been lucky enough to work with people who have been in another league from me, and I think that I've learned so much from them. You know, when I look back.
But when you say in another league, in what way? Well, academically?
No, not just that. I mean, when I started working, the people that I've worked with a guy called George Wilson, who's a big commercial developer around this area. He was amazing. But again, I learned from him a different skill set from someone like Mark Sheardown, who again is an incredibly successful developer around here. Then Tony Pidgley. You know, Tony gave me a lot of advice. I met Tony a number of times. He was basically the chairman of Barclay. Learned loads off him. Steve Morgan created Redrow. If you look at Steve, I think he gave away £200 million in the last year. You know, the guy's trying to give away money quicker than he ever made it. I've learned loads from all of them, and I think that it's important that you can do that. It's important when you get a bit of success, you don't suddenly think you can't learn anymore, or you've made it. I think, because I think very quickly that will lead to that will lead to you making mistakes that you might not be able to pull out of.
Because a lot of people who aren't in the business world maybe look at business people and think, you've got to be a bastard to succeed.
No.
You've got to be prepared to turn people over. You've got to, go in hard. And all of the stuff that we've been talking about has been 180 degrees opposite to that.
I think it's the opposite. I'll tell you why I think I've succeeded. I've had people, subcontractors, when someone's gone bust on them, okay? And there are loads of build companies. Coombs went bust this week, Cardi's, Barwicks, all of them, yeah? I've had guys someone go bust on them, they lose 50,000 quid, they're going to lose their home. I've paid them. I've stopped them losing their home. What does that do? That gets me loyalty. He gets 2 calls asking to go to a site. Who's he going to go and help? The bloke who paid him 3 months early in order that he didn't lose his house, or the bloke who he doesn't know. I think that the sports clubs, when I go to another sports club and say I'm going to build this for you, they go and talk to the people in Herne Bay. What do you think they say to them? Yeah, this bloke had to do this and he did this. So I think the opposite. I think in business, if you do what you say you're going to do, okay, and you are straightforward, but at the same time, if people decide that they want to vary what they promised you, then you have to say to them, well, there are either consequences to that, I either won't work with you, or I'm going to change the terms at which this is in. That to me is how business works.
Just be straight and honest.
You've got to do what you do. I've never had a problem ringing somebody up and telling them, look, you turned up to my site 2 months late, I'm going to pay you 2 months late. It's obviously got a problem with that. Yeah, and I'll ring them up and ask them. And if they've got a problem with it, don't turn up to my site. So I think that you've got to be honest, and I think you've got to be fair but firm, and that doesn't mean being bad. I think the opposite. I think that I felt that the most I've got from it is by giving, and that's what I felt, and that's in staff. One of the best stories I've got is she started off as my cleaner, and she's now basically runs the finances of this company. She's a chartered accountant.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I paid for her to do that. She just built her dream home. Okay, I lent her the land. I helped her out. Everyone did the work for her because she wouldn't sign their invoice off probably because she controls the finances. So she got it built. But she's just, basically set herself up for life. And I'm proud of her.
Makes you feel good.
Of course it does. And, also that gives you a loyalty and that gives you a feeling that you just cannot get. I'm so proud of her. I think it's amazing to go from someone who was earning, I don't know, to where she is now. She's done that. I haven't done it.
Yeah.
She's made me want to help her.
Well, I think it's a very good note to finish on. Mark Quinn, it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you. Are you a happy guy in yourself? Are you happy with the world?
Love it. Yeah, I have days the same as you and anyone. But on the whole, yeah, I feel very lucky. I've got a great family. I've got good friends, great team there. Yeah, I am a happy person. Yeah.
Excellent. Mark Quinn, thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Good stuff.